Thank you very much, Rabbi Yisrael. Thank you very much, Rabbi Zalman Leib, Rishus, the Morada Asra, Rav Leshes Shlita, and all of you who are here, Anashim, Bahanashim, dear friends, Chasidim, V'Anshei Maisa. You know, there's an expression in Yiddish, as a gast of avayel, zet amayel, which literally translated means a guest for a while sees a mile, meaning somebody who comes to visit from a distance sometimes observes things that people who are entrenched in the situation take for granted or don't observe. On the other hand, we say that somebody who's on the outside, who's a guest, can't really appreciate the internal dynamics of a community because he may see things that other people don't see, but he's not part of it. So yesh bazeh, mashein bazeh. Sometimes it's great to be a guest, so you have a distance, a perspective, eyebird's view, as they said. On the other hand, to be a citizen, to be a resident, to be a toishav, right, allows you an intimate experience of the realities, of the challenges, of the blessings, of the vices at hand. I have the privilege of speaking all around the world. Usually, I'm a guest. The guest has one advantage, but has another disadvantage. Sometimes I speak in places where I'm a citizen. I'm a resident, so I have the advantage of being a resident, but the disadvantage of not being a guest. Tonight is the first time that I have both milas. I'm a guest and I'm a citizen. Avraham Avinu says, Geir v'toishav anoichi imachem. Why both words? Either you're a geir or you're a toishav. Which one are you? So the truth is that Avraham was actually articulating the foundation of Jewish existence throughout history. The Jew comes to a land, to a country, to Bnei Ches, and he says, listen, on one end, I'm a toishav. I pay taxes. You guys pay taxes, no? I pay taxes. I follow the law. Dina de Malchus Adina. Probably this is one of the only shuls in Monsey that is actually legal according to the zoning laws of Monsey, with all of the litigation and all of the tsaris and headaches and the money that was spent. So you could really say that you're a toishavim. You follow the law of the land. A Jew is a toishav, dina de malchus adina, have a mispalel b'shloim shal malchus, that says in Pirkei Avos. A Jew follows the dinei hamalchus. He's a toishav. He's an integrated citizen in the community that he lives. But Avraham Avinu says to Bnei Ches, it only goes till a certain point. You should know that at the same time I'm also a geir. I'm a foreigner. I'm a stranger. I'm an alien. And it's that paradox, geir v'toishav, that probably is one of the most powerful components that define Jewish existence. The ability of, the Gemara says, halach lekarta zal b'nimusa, to be able to follow the patterns of each culture, because if not, you can't impact it. And on the other hand, not to become a recipient, and to become defined by that culture, but to know that you're an ambassador of the creator of the world, Melech Malchei, Hamlachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So tonight I could say, probably not for very long, maybe yes, I don't know. Depends on different, that depends on another sugya. Geir v'soishav anoichi yimachem. Now, today is Yutes Elul. It's a day after Chai Elul. People are getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. So I would like to articulate what I think are three tremendous dynamics and ideas that the Alter Rebbe, following the Baal Shem Tov, who he used to call Zayda, introduced and emphasized in Yiddishkeit. Especially when you're dealing with a community and a shul, in a place that has become over the last years an Ir ve'ein b'Yisrael, literally, one of the fastest growing, what you would call Haredi, religious, observant Torah, yeshiva communities in all of the United States of America, one of them. Here, one gets the opportunity to crystallize for themselves what was the contribution of the Baal Shem Tov, what was the contribution of the Alter Rebbe, And since the Alter Rebbe once said, and the Rebbe would often quote it, that Chassidus is not a maflega, Chassidus is not a party, rather it belongs to Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe would constantly repeat this, and we have to understand what this means, because I think that not all Chassidei Chabad understand what that means. What did the Alter Rebbe mean that Chassidus is not a maflega, it's not a party? What did he mean? That it's not a political party? It's not a Aguda or the Likud or the Marach or Yisrael. I mean, of course it's not a political party. It was born in the Ukraine. It developed in Eastern Europe. What did he mean by it's not a maflega? What he meant was that nobody should ever think that Chassidus belongs to a particular community, to a particular person. It belongs to people who dress a certain way, who daven a certain nusach, who exist in a certain shul, and who have their own culture of what they eat, what they talk about at the Kiddush, and how they criticize each other. When that happens, it gets hijacked by a party, by a family, by a tribe. It stops serving its purpose. Chassidus is equally applicable to every single Jew, whoever he or she is. Wherever they daven, whatever lifestyle they live, whatever education they had, whatever yeshiva they were raised in, and whatever type of family they develop, and whatever career and vocation, they may not wear your clothes, they may not daven your nusach, they may not even know 90% of the things you know. Probably you don't know 90% of the things they know. But nonetheless, the moment it becomes parochial, the moment it's stripped from its all-inclusive, universal energy that relates to every Jew, whoever he or she is in their own form, then somehow we are not relating to the true energy of what that is. And I want to articulate this evening what I think are three from many major concepts that were introduced by them, or at least emphasized by the Baal Shem Tov and Alter Rebbe, which also explains the famous idea that Chai Elul gives a chayus. In Elul, especially the last 12 days of Elul, what type of vitality does it give? Everybody knows that soon Yom Kippur comes, and we start a Maisa, what's called Viduyim. Confessions. A lot of confessions. Yom Kippur, you confess again, and again, and again, and yet again. But there's something very strange about the confessions. What is strange is that the custom of most Jews is that we say it with a niggin, with a melody. If you're looking for chazan. Ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, etc. Now, I always found that strange. Yeah? Imagine somebody, backstabbed you in business. Right? They backstabbed you, Rahman al-Islam, they made you lose $100,000, whatever it is. They slandered you, they gossiped you, and this person feels guilty. So it's coming Rosh Hashanah, they come to ask you forgiveness. So they walk into your house, you say yes. I backstabbed you. I slandered you. Almost killed you. Get out of my house. What is this, an opera? Is this a confession or an opera? And then comes to Valcheitig and V'Alkula, and now maybe you'll forgive me. Are we watching a play, or you want to ask forgiveness? I was also always perplexed by the fact that it's all said plurally. Ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu. What do you mean plural? I come to you to ask you forgiveness, right? And I say to you, we have betrayed you. Who's we? The United States of America? The Republic of South Africa? Who's we? Human civilization? Who's this we? The basis of confession is accountability. Accountability is I. It begins with me. Not we. Who's we? Me, my wife, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law. I ask you forgiveness. Ashamti, bagadati, gazalti. And the same is with al-chet shechatamnu b'machal u'mishta. Really? Everybody's responsible for my food addiction? Of course, if you wouldn't serve good food. Right? So my wife is responsible for my food addiction. Al chen shechatanu when chatanu chatasi. I sinned. Rav called me up the other day. He says he has a chuppah, and the problem is he has 50 choshev people, but he only has 7 brachas. What should he do? He's going to give out the 7 brachas. He's going to insult 43 people who will never speak to him again. So what does he do? So I gave him an idea. I said, instead of 7 brachas, be the mechaber to say al chet under the chuppah. The only thing is you have to match for each one the right al chet that belongs to him. You know, one guy needs the whatever. I don't have to get specific. One guy needs al chet shacham v'necha b'yoydim or below yoydim. Remember, the foot of us used to say, "Beveis, aber man macht sich nicht wissendig." You understood that? B'yoydim you know, but below yoydim you make believe you don't know. That's how he types it. Etc. You have to match it. Somehow my suggestion didn't fly. I don't know why. I thought it was a very wise suggestion, but he didn't think it's going to fly with the people. What's this singing and what's this plurality? Lashon Rabbim, the plural terminology. I have another question. Every time we confess, and this is true every day, we give an introduction. Ribono shel olam, ein anu azei fanem ukshei yoref loimar lefanecha. Tzadikim anachnu v'loi chatanu. Aval anachnu v'aveiseinu chatanu. In other words, I'm not a chutzpah. I'm not going to come and tell you I'm a tzaddik, I'm righteous. You should know I sin. Imagine somebody is coming to ask you for forgiveness. They come into you and they say, I want to tell you something. You know, really, I should stand here and tell you I'm a tzaddik. I'm a great man. But I'm not a chutzpah. So I'm not going to tell you I'm a tzaddik. Come on, that's confession. You have to tell me you're not a tzaddik. There was a Jew, his name was Simon Wiesenthal. You probably heard of Simon Wiesenthal, was the great Nazi hunter. And he describes in one of his books, he died a few years ago, an old man in the 90s. He dedicated his life to find SS and Nazi criminals, Yimach Shema. And he was sometimes successful and often unsuccessful, but this was his life mission. He himself was a survivor of the camps. And he describes that in one of the DP camps, the displaced persons camps, after the liberation, they were in one of the displaced persons camps, and there was somebody who got money from a relative overseas, a very significant amount of money, and somehow Simon Wiesenthal got a significant amount of money, and another person borrowed $10 from him. $10 after the war, without anything, was an enormous amount of money. And Wiesenthal lent him the money. It came time to pay back, right? So you know there's an old word, the Rashba writes, the Shibbolei Halekhet writes, Minig Mavatul Halacha, that there's certain situations in Judaism, sometimes you say Minig Oisis Gehenim, and sometimes we say, from Aramins, but sometimes you say Minig Mavatul Halacha. Minig is more powerful than Halacha. How do you know? So they say an old anecdote, because the Halacha is that when you borrow money, you have to pay it back. What's the Minig? The minig, of course, is not to pay it back. So we see that minig mavatul halacha. I once said that's pshat the volatziyah. People don't know what means a volatziyah. We say a volatziyah in Goyal, umekabelin dein min dein, right? V'amrin kaddish. What's pshat? Pshat is, I need money, yeah? So I borrow money from you, now I have to pay back. I don't have the money, so I go to you. I take the money from you and then I pay you back. But now I have to pay you back, so I go to somebody else. So mekabelin dein min dein, you take from this one. It said, v'yamrin kaddish. Somebody is going to say kaddish on the money. The question is who? So minig mavatul halacha. So Simon Wiesenthal wants the money. The Jew is not giving it to him. Months go by. The day after this guy gets a visa, and he's leaving to the United States, he comes over to Wiesenthal and he says, here, the $10. So Wiesenthal says, I looked at him and I said, you know, $10 is not worth it for me to have me change my opinion about you. It's not worth it. I don't know how much of a Jewish idea that is. I mean, we all know how much of a Jewish idea that is. But it's certainly an interesting concept. There was once a Yid, you remember before the iPhones and the Palm Pilots, before they came in and introduced all of their energy into our life, people used to have little booklets, diaries. I'm sure there's still 2 or 3 Jews who have little booklets with like 2,000 telephone numbers, right? I'm sure there's a few who still use pens and you spell words correctly, etc. Fine. So this Jew comes over to his friend Erev Rosh Hashanah. He says, "No, I lent you $5,000. Give it back." He said, "I don't know who you are." He says, "What do you mean you wrote it down?" He says, "If I wrote it down, I'm going to check my bichala." He takes out his bichala, his little book. He looks. "Oh, you're right. I borrowed from you $5,000. I said, "So you're a ganav, you're a shakran, pay it back right now." Just listen. If you continue to scream, I'm going to erase you from my bichala. And that's it. So, you come in, you want to apologize. Apologize. What do you say? "I'm not going to say I'm a tzaddik. I'm going to..." Come on, that's a confession. What's pshat? What's pshat in all of this? So, Rabbi YY, here we have contained one of the greatest ideas that relate to the whole concept of how you view Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur confession. And I think the best way to portray it is by another fascinating concept. If you listen to the Kriyas HaTorah of yesterday, Parshas Kisavai, there's a fascinating mitzvah, the second mitzvah of the Parsha right after Bikurim, called Vidui Meiser. Vidui Meiser was a very interesting mitzvah. Every fourth year from the 7-year cycle and 7th year, on Erev Pesach, a Jew had to get up either in the Beis HaMikdash or in his home and make a verbal declaration of the fact that over the last 3.5 years, he taxed and he gave all the charities he had to give from his grain and his produce, his fruits and his vegetables. He gave to the Kohen, he gave to the Levi, he gave to the poor people, he gave to the widow, he gave to the stranger, he gave to the orphan, he brought in Yerushalayim, he did everything. This is called Vidui Meiser. You take a look at the text that we heard yesterday in Kisavai, from which this week is blessed, and Shabbos Chayalul. Take a look at the text, because it's a fascinating text, and I'm not sure that we have its comparison anywhere else in Judaism. It says, "V'amartu lifnei Hashem Elokecha." Speak before Hashem, and this is what you should say. "Biyarti hakodesh min habayis." I separated, I removed the holy food from my home. I gave it to the Levi, the Ger, the orphan, the widow. Kechol mitzvascha asher tzivisani. Like the entire mitzvah that you commanded me. Lo yavarti mitzvaysecha v'lo shachachti. I did not transgress. I didn't even forget. If this is not enough, lo yachalti ba'oini mimenu. I didn't eat it when I was an oine in the morning. I didn't touch it or eat it when I was tamei. I didn't use it for inappropriate purchases. I obeyed your voice, God. I did everything that you commanded me. And now, now, as Rashi says, I did what you wanted. Now you do what you promised. And look down from heaven and bless your nation and the land that you have given us. A beautiful declaration. You stand up in front of God twice every 7 years, year number 4, year number 7, and what you tell him is, I got it right. I did everything right. I forgot nothing. Asisi kechoil asher tzivisani. Not 50%, not 90%, not 99%. Perfect, 100%. Beautiful. I ask you one question. Do you hear a confession here? It's called Vidui Meiser. Everywhere. In Rashi, in Chazal, in Rambam, in all of the literature of Torah Shebaal Peh. It's called the confession, the mitzvah of confession. Do you hear a confession here? Imagine you come home tonight after this beautiful dinner and you tell your wife, you never said, you know, something that's been sitting on my heart for a while, I have a confession to make to you. And your wife is like, wow. You know, she right away WhatsApps her sister. She can't believe it. I'm married to this guy for 17 years. And she melts away. Wow, like, what happened? You know, what did they feed at this dinner? What did Jacobson say? I mean, what went on? And she's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And he says, my confession consists of a simple message. I want you to know that you happen to be married to a perfect, impeccable, flawless, capable, handsome, slim, wonderful, stupendous, extraordinary human being. A husband like me, you can't find anywhere in the world. A father to your children like me is unparalleled in the history of human civilization. Not only have I never transgressed anything you asked me to do, lo shachachti, the most classic excuse of Jewish men. Since the days of Adam, I forgot. I forgot. They're laughing. Some are crying, some are laughing. Depends if you ended up with a lemon or an esrog. I forgot! I forgot nothing! And now Nebutzin, after my confession, and now I'm sure you will serve me. You will bestow upon me all your grace and affection, all your blessings for eternity. Now, I'm not the one to judge if you're crazy or you're normal. That's for your therapist and your mother-in-law to judge. But one thing I know, a confession, it's not. I'm a shuganan, a malech, a vidui, this is not. It's not a confession. That's exactly what happens here. That's exactly what happens. A Jew stands up, he says not one word of self-criticism. I could have been better. I could have grown. No! Was happens? Wow. Interesting. So you might tell me, Rabbi Jacobson, don't get so excited. Vidui doesn't mean confession. Vidui means verbal declaration. Usually, right? That's what you were thinking. Great linguist there. Vidui means a verbal declaration. In this case, it's not a confession, it's a verbal declaration. Granted, moide, I confess. But I want to ask you a question. What's exactly the point of this verbal declaration? God doesn't know that you gave Truma and Meiser. I understand the point of confession of a mistake. It's valuable, whoever here ever confessed a mistake. There's such a concept in Monsey. If you've ever confessed, there's a value of verbally saying, I'm sorry. Try it out once in a while. It's a nice exercise. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I got it. What's the value of the verbal declaration of telling the Rebbeinu Shalom, by the way, if you didn't notice, I did this perfectly? What's the value? Standing up, nobody's listening, only him, and saying, Hashem, I just want to tell you something. I'm an awesome guy. That's the mitzvah. And this is a mitzvah's essay minat Torah on every single Jew who owns any earth. And it happened twice every 7 years. And dafka Erev Pesach, right before the Seder. If you didn't do it Erev Pesach, you can do it at the end of Pesach. And you do it in your home, in your garage, in your backyard, unless you were in the Beis HaMikdash, which is the best place to do it. What an interesting mitzvah, Vidui Meiser. How do we explain this? My dear friends, this very question contains the powerful perspective of what confession is really all about. You see, Kisava is read at the end of Elul before Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Kippur. This year it was read Chayel. You know why? Because if you want to appreciate what the vidui of Yom Kippur is going to be like, you first have to appreciate what the vidui meiser of Parshas Kisava is like. You won't understand the vidui of Yom Kippur if you don't understand what vidui is, the way it's introduced in the parsha that's read towards the end of Chumash, right before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Yemei HaRachman. Because what does it really mean to confess a mistake? What does it really mean? They say a meiser that Erev Yom Kippur, there was a Jew walking in Monsey to shul. And he was a very serious Jew who took himself very seriously, and he looked very depressed. So Chassidus Shaletz is a Chassidus humorist or comedian, was also walking to shul. And he sees this guy is mamish depressed. He says, Rabbi Yid, why the depression? He says, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is not such a bad day. It's a good day, forgiveness. He says, you don't understand. I checked my iPhone. I haven't done one Aveira since last Yom Kippur. So my whole Yom Kippur is going to be a bracha levatol. I'm going to say, I didn't do even one sin. So for me, the whole Yom Kippur is meaningless. I have no forgiveness to ask for. It's a waste of time. So the Chassidish Shalat says, what's the problem? There's a half an hour left to Yom Kippur. So the guy says, what can I do in a half an hour? He says, oh, plenty. He says, I don't have an imagination. If you haven't realized, give me an example. He says, very simple. The neighbor who lives right near you, down the block, right next door neighbor, do you love him or do you hate him? He says, of course I hate him. He says, I have a great idea. Go over to him. Go into his house. Beat him up. Where do you have a better Aveira than beating up a Jew right before Yom Kippur? And then you'll be able to ask forgiveness, oh Yom Kippur, ben adam la'makah, ben adam la'chaveira. You'll have a lustige, lichtige, gewaltige Yom Kippur. He says, psst, gewaldige idea. He goes to his next door neighbor, knocks on the door. The guy is finishing up a Sudam of Sekes, comes in, sees him. Yankel, terach, terach, terach. Punches him in his face, kicks him in his feet and in his stomach. The guy is on the ground, he's kicking and punching l'shem, yichud kutshabrichu, shchite, to have a chalois of tshuva and kapora, and Yom Kippur, he looks at the clock, there's still 20 minutes to shkir, he goes right to another 15 minutes of beating him up. The poor guy is verhakt, verschmettert, verbluchtigt, verbrochen. Anyway, this man walks out of the beating so happy. You never saw him so happy. Walks to shul with such joy and simcha. Finally, he's able to have a real Yom Kippur. He can ask mechillah from Hashem a whole 24 hours. And as he's walking down the block, the wife of the beaten Jew comes running out to the porch. And she gives a scream down the block. She says, Rabbi YY, I don't know who you are. I can't see you. But I just want to tell you that you'll never in your life know what a great mitzvah you just did. Das came nicht wissen, was mitzvah selbst getan. And there went his Yom Kippur. So I want to ask you a shaila. What's this confession going on? What's pshat? My Rabbi say, here you have in a little small mitzvah of Videi Monsey, you have the essence of Yiddishkeit, the essence of education, the essence of much of Chassidus, the essence of what pedagogy is. And I know I'm sitting in the presence of a great pedagogue on my right and a great Rav on my left. And here we have, so if you disagree with me, so you'll let us know, you'll make a macha, and I'll say I'm a guest. Gay. What's pshat? What does it really mean to confess? What does it really mean to confess? So, you forgive me, a little vart in Lumdus. The Rambam has a sefer, you all know Yad HaChazaka. He has the first sefer, Sefer Hamada. It includes the fundamentals of Yiddishkeit. It starts off with Hilchis Yisoidei HaTorah, the laws of the fundamentals of Torah. Faith in Hashem, creation of the world, Nevuah, prophecy, Kiddush Hashem, Torah min Hashamayim, etc. The Yisoidus, Hilchis Yisoidei HaTorah, Nevuas Moshe, the fundamentals of Judaism. Then he has a section called Hilchis Deis, ethics, how to live. He has a section Hilchis Talmud Torah, Hilchis Avodah Zarah, idolatry, Talmud Torah, and finally Hilchis Tshuva. The fundamentals of Torah. Hilchis Tshuva has 10 chapters. 3 of them, Hey, Vav, Zayin, are dedicated to the theme of Bechira, free choice. He starts off, the fact that a person has free choice is the foundation of all Torah mitzvahs. Because if there's no free choice, I can't tell you what to do. You're pre-programmed. And if I do tell you what to do, I can't blame you if you don't do it. You're pre-programmed. There's no reward. There's no punishment. There's nothing that you're doing volitional. It's all coerced because you're pre-programmed. So therefore the Rambam says if you remove the concept of Bechira, Judaism is meaningless. God wants you to behave a certain way. It's like telling the tiger, listen, today I want you to eat grass. Thank you. Doesn't work that way. This Bechira. The question in Rambam is, where do the chapters of Bechira belong? Not in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. Why in Hilchos Tshuva? Bechira is the foundation of every mitzvah. There's no tefillin without bechira. There's no tzitzis without bechira. There's no Shabbos without bechira. There's no mezuzah without bechira. There's no niskei mammon without bechira. There's not one halacha in Judaism that is significant if you don't believe a person has choices. Because then there's no mitzvah, there's no aveda, there's no reward, there's no punishment, there's no moral, there's no immoral. The whole halacha falls apart and there's no bechira. Why does the Rambam put it in Hilchos Tshuva? True, Tshuva is also based on bechira. But so is every other mitzvah. It belongs in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah together with Amunah. But he puts it in Hilchos Tshuva. Why? The pshat is, and now listen well, because the association between bechira and tshuva is very different than the association between bechira and every other mitzvah. And let me explain. With every other mitzvah, the definition of the mitzvah is a particular definition. To listen to Shofar Rosh Hashanah, to hear the Megillah on Purim, to fast on Yom Kippur, to make Kiddush on Shabbos, to don tefillin in the morning. That's the definition of the mitzvah. However, if there's no free choice, I can't tell somebody to do a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah, they're pre-programmed. But the definition of the mitzvah is not bechira. Definition of the mitzvah is what? Tefillin, Shofar, Megillah, Chanukah, whatever the mitzvah is, mezuzah. When it comes to tshuva, bechira is not only a prerequisite that allows for tshuva. Bechira is the chefta of tshuva. That is the definition of tshuva, that you have bechira. In other words, by other mitzvahs, bechira affects the gavra, but it doesn't define the chefta of the mitzvah. The chefta of the mitzvah is shofar, tefillin, mezuzah, lulav. Lulav is not bechira. Lulav is a myrtle branch. Not a myrtle branch. A palm branch. That's what the definition is. Of course, if there's no bechira, so then I can't tell you to do shake a lulav. By tshuva, bechira is not just about the gavra. It's the heft of tshuva. What does tshuva mean? Tshuva means I made a mistake. Tshuva means I'm accountable. Tshuva means I had a choice. I chose wrongly. Tshuva means I can choose differently for the future. That's what tshuva is. Tshuva means I take responsibility for my life, saying, I am the one who made choices. And therefore I say I'm sorry, and therefore I say I resolve for the future to do it differently. That's why the Rambam puts bechira in tshuva, because it defines the very heft of what tshuva means. So what is confession based on? Confession is based on the acknowledgement of how powerful you are. Tshuva is based on acknowledging that you have real bechira. If not, I'm a victim. My mother is guilty. My father is guilty. My school is guilty. My community is guilty. My rabbi is guilty. My mashpia is guilty. My teacher is guilty. My therapist is guilty. My wife is guilty. My shviga is guilty. My boss is guilty. I'm just a victim. I'm just a victim. They say there was a guy who used to come into the bar at night. Comes in, orders a drink. The guy gives him a drink. He drinks it. He takes the glass and he throws it at the bartender. The poor guy is bleeding. He says, get out of here right now. I call the police. He says, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm so embarrassed. I have uncontrollable rage in me because my mother was an alcoholic. He says, okay, I forgive you. Comes back the next night, orders another glass of whiskey, finishes, takes the glass, whack, right at the bartender. Poor guy's nose almost broken. What's going on? He says, I'm so embarrassed, I feel horrible, but my father was a codependent and a gambler, and I have this crazy rage, and therefore, okay. Next night, same thing, throws it. What now? He said, I'm so embarrassed, I'm a horrible person, what should I do? This and this happened to me, blah, blah. He says, listen, enough. Either you go to therapy or I'm calling the police. He said, okay, I'll go to therapy. I don't want to see you here till you finish with your therapy. Fine. Comes back 9 months later. Walks into the bartender, takes the glass, l'chai, finishes, takes the glass, whack, right in his face. He says, what now? He says, I went to therapy and now I'm not embarrassed anymore. So you understand, my dear friends, there's that concept. Then there's no tshuva. I'm a victim. This and this happened to me. And you know what? The person may be right about the data. This and this may have happened to me. True. and this person may have said this and may have done this. True. But Yadus believes that a neshama is uninhibited. It's free. It's a chelik elikami mal. And therefore, at its core, it's as wholesome, as holy, as pure, as happy, as confident as the creator of the world himself. Keep it selim. And just like God is not subjected to abuse, at the core of the human spirit, there's a freedom. And therefore I could say, I'm accountable. I'm accountable for the past, and then therefore accountable for the future. But there's something even more, Rabbi say, and that is, if I look at myself in the mirror, and what I see is a shmata, I tell myself I'm worthless, I'm insignificant, I'm valueless. I'm so bad, I was always bad, I'll always be bad, I'm just a failure of every type of conceivable system. Can I do tshuva? Some of us think that's the best tshuva in the world. You come and you say, God, I'm such a shmat, I was always a shmat, I'll always be a shmat. I'm filthy, I'm dirty, I'm horrible, I'm a Rasha ben Rasha from the Eitz Hadas. I'm the serpent itself. And therefore I have nothing, just forgive me, do me a favor. Great tshuva, that's not tshuva. That's called depression. That's not tshuva. That's called melancholy, dejection, a form of psychological suicide and self-denigration and abuse. It has nothing to do with tshuva. And I'll tell you why. The Gemara says, Talmud Chacham shenimtzer revav al bigdei chayav misa. Talmud Chacham who has a stain on his beged. If I'm wearing a white tuxedo, and now comes dinner, and you're going to serve spear, I don't know, spear, what's Gitman? Those aren't spear ribs in your imagination. And I have a white tuxedo, right? And of course I'm very hungry and I see the spear ribs and I start eating it and I get a little excited and gluttonous. And I come home, my wife says, you know what you look like? I say, what? White and red go perfectly together. She says, yeah, but not the red of spear ribs. And then afterwards they're going to serve parava ice cream. And you're going to put ice cream. Sapasnish. You take a look at yourself, you say, Sapasnish. I'm so beautiful. My garments are so lovely. How can they be so ugly? In order, but what happens if you're wearing messy garments? They're dirty, they're filthy, and now you put spare ribs on them, ice cream. Who cares? Min b'minoi einoi chotzitz. What's the big deal? Only if I recognize that I'm white can I really be hurt by the fact that there's a stain in me. But if I think that I'm dirty, that I'm lowly, that I'm despicable, I don't even recognize that it's a stain. The stain belongs to me, that's who I am. I am the stain. Vidui, you want vidui? Vidui means you have to recognize who you're capable of being, who you really are. You have to be able to understand how white, how beautiful, how wholesome, how sacred, how much God loves you unconditionally and absolutely, how pure, how innocent, how good, how free, how uninhibited. Now I say, you know what? This stain is sapasnished. I don't want this on my tuxedo. Therefore, I'm going to confess. So there's 3 points. If I don't understand my true greatness as a chelik elikami mal mamash as a part of Hashem, I'm a victim. If I'm a victim, there's no vidya, I'm not accountable. Number 2, if I don't recognize my whiteness, I can't change my future. I'm a victim. Number 3, if I don't recognize my whiteness, I don't even recognize the stain. I don't recognize the stain. Why should I want to get rid of it? Why should I want to be hurt? Here is the cheftza of tshuva. Now you understand why the first vidui is vidui maisa before the vidui of Yom Kippur. Before you get up to Hashem and you say, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazamnu, Barnadofi, Al Chet, Al Chet, Al Chet, Al Chet, Al Chet. First there's another vidui. And that vidui can only work in context of this vidui. If you don't have the context of this vidui, the second vidui is not a vidui. It's just confirmation of how horrible I am. And how horrible we all are. It must be in context of the first vidui. What's the first vidui? The first vidui is you come to Hashem and you say, you know what? Asisi kechoy lasher tzivasani. Shamati b'koil Hashem Elokoi. There's so much that's good. There's so much that's right. There's so much that's beautiful. The Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, once went in, called in the secretary of Chatsha Fagin, Hashem Yinkim Damai, and says, call in the best yeshiva bachrim, the best boys, I'm going to say a minor for them. No, Chatsha was a saturated Chassidish Yid, so he went in, he called the best bachrim, but he also made sure that the yenta of the Zal knew about it. You know, every base medrash has a yenta. So this guy already notified everybody, and the door was open. Everybody packed into the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe Rayatz takes a look, and he sees everybody is there. He says the Maimer. They leave. He asks Reb Chatsha, he says, Chatsha, I told you to bring in the best bachar. So Reb Chatsha says, Rebbe, kulam ahuvim. They're all beloved. The Rebbe says, emes, aber kulam brurim? Aber kulam brurim? Are they all pure? Chatsha says, ich weiß nicht. Aber kulam giborim. They're all fighting. The Rebbe says, emes, aber kulam kedoshim? Are they all holy? He says, Rebbe, ich weiß nicht. Aber kulam oisim be'emo be'yir etzaykoyim. But everyone, in one way or another, is trying to serve God. And the Rebbe Rayatz thanked him. There's no vidui tshuva without vidui meiser. What do we say in Shir Hashirim? Shchoirani v'navo. That's where the expression black is beautiful comes from. Shchoirani v'navo. Of course, tshuva is based on the idea of shchoirani. I may have tainted my soul. I may have tainted my purity. But it must come with a recognition of v'navo. Who you are. You're a chelik elikami mal. How much God loves you and celebrates you, and that there's a relationship that's unbreakable, and that there is a bond that can't be shattered, and even all the mistakes in the world cannot obliterate the essential trust and loyalty and love. Now you can recognize how beautiful you are. Now you recognize Shchoirani. Now you understand why you can't say Hashamnu without a niggin. You're going to start saying Hashamnu, but none of God says, no. The first thing is I have to hear you sing. Ay. You need the song. You need the music. You need to be able to celebrate yourself and your relationship with your Rebbeinu Shalom in order to say Hashamnu. And now you understand why you say Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Al Chetchechatanu. And you introduce it, you say, She'enonu azifonim u'kshe'yerev lo'im tzadikim anachnu v'leichatanu. The klal in all of Torah Shabbat Peh is, when we say, don't say this, but say this, it means, of course, say that. Of course, say that. Right? I'm just telling you, don't only say that. The Shalah says, whenever it says al tikri, it doesn't mean al tikri. Al tikri banayich. Of course, tikri banayich. It says banayich. Don't stay there. Ella boinoyich. Really, I want to come to you, God, and say, you know what? Tzadikim anachnu. Why tzadikim anachnu? Because at my core self, I am not bad. I am good, and because I'm one with you. I'm a reflection of you. And you know why I made mistakes? Only because I didn't know about that part of me. That's why I made the mistake. The real mistake is that I don't know how pure I am, and therefore I need other things to fulfill my voids. But I'm not going to stop there and say tzadikim anachnu v'leichatanu. Then it becomes a form of arrogance. We're talking about a confidence that is associated with deep humility, with self-love that is not narcissism, with self-love that is based on appreciation of how much God invested in your soul in this world. So you say Hashamnu Bagadnu plurally. Who's the plurally? Dr. Pinchas Karitza, half of a fella. Who's Hashamnu? You know who Hashamnu is? Pinchas Karitza. Who's we? You and Hashem. We're in this together. We're in this together. Of course I'm guilty. But aren't you also a little guilty? Didn't you set up the circumstances? We were together. And if we were together, it means even in the abyss, you were with me. If you were with me, there's a way out. There's a way out. It's never an unredeemable situation. So the Vidui Meiser is the introduction to the Vidui Tshuva. The Shchoira Nivanavo, Benois Yerushalayim, that's the introduction. This is what every child has to know. This is what every Jewish girl has to know. Every person has to know. This is what every one of us has to know. We could look at our children this way, if we view ourselves this way, if you view our fellow Jews this way. Today, the Jewish community in Monsey is yearning for this. Yearning for this. I don't have to tell you, you live here many years. Lovely people in this place. First of all, because there's a lot of space, so people are more relaxed. I come from a continent called Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, you drive 50 miles per hour, you get a ticket for double parking. You don't even understand the joke. You have been here too long. In Brooklyn, there's a serenity prayer. It goes like this: God, give me patience and give it to me now. Baruch Hashem, you understood that. There's a lot of space here. Litin Revach ben Parshal Parsha. Sometimes when there's too much space, people lose a little bit of their creative energy. You know what I mean? Present company excluded, of course. But sometimes you need a little Tchias HaMesa. It's dark, it's quiet. You know, no ambulances, nobody screaming, no protests. I was Zeicha many years to have the Labor Day parade in my midst. You know, it brings out all your juices. Teaches you about diversity. How do you learn about diversity when they're serving hot dogs that are kosher in 7-Eleven? Explain to me how you learn about diversity in this place. I taught in Chayv for many years. I had a student who came from NYU. He was a valedictorian, he was at NYU, and he came to yeshiva. And I remember I see him on the phone in the middle of his Seder, and he's apologizing. What's happening is my father's giving it to me. I listen in, his father is screaming, they brainwashed you, they abducted you, they kidnapped you, you had such a bright future, they just want you in a box, you're going to lose your whole individuality, your whole idea of what it means to be a human being. And he's a young bach, a very spiritual person, great kid. Today he's a Rosh Hashiva, Chashav Rosh Hashiva, a Balchuva Yeshiva, a very geschmacka person. And I see Nebuch, he's 18, 19, and his father is screaming at him in the phone. So, Eis Lasses Lashem, usually I try to behave, but, you know, I had to do something, I felt so bad. So I asked him, ask your father permission if I could take the phone. He says, there's a rabbi here who wants to talk to his father. Here, the kidnapper himself. So I take the phone, I say, Mr. So-and-so, I want to tell you, I know I'm sorry for mixing in the conversation, I just asked permission, I heard you. I want to tell you how proud we are of your son, how proud you should be, how he's growing. And in fact, I have to run now, because every afternoon we have for our students a very special experience. And that is they go to Lefferts Park. And in Lefferts Park they play basketball with African Americans. Now you're from Teaneck, New Jersey. And I always feel bad that Jews in New Jersey don't get that experience. But our youth in Crown Heights, every day they go to Lefferts Park. They play basketball with African Americans. We don't teach diversity, we live it, we breathe it. They chat with them, they communicate with them, they hear about the frustrations of the African American community. They get to know their vocabulary, they get to know about their education, they get to know, and I say something more, let's face it, most Jewish kids, not all Jewish kids are so athletic. The African Americans, Baruch Hashem, and they teach our kids how to nurture their bodies and how to develop their muscles and how to play a good game of basketball. How after a few years it enriches them. And wherever they go in the world, they know we don't preach diversity, we don't preach tolerance, we live tolerance. And I want to thank you for entrusting us and trusting your child to become a truly tolerant person who will be a shining example. And the father is like, wow, that's incredible. That's amazing. Maybe you could make your yeshiva in our city too. And I give him back the phone and he tells his son, my blessings, my blessings. And today he doesn't regret it. Today he doesn't regret it. How did I get into this? I forgot. Monsey, I'm talking about Monsey, yeah. So you have a lot of people there, they're very relaxed. They're very relaxed. Shabbos morning, minyan finishes in many shuls 10 to 11. 20 to 1, you're ready after the meal. 20 to 1, you're after the meal. 1 o'clock, you're ready in the middle of the nap. Middle of the nap. 7 o'clock, you wake up for Daf Yomi, for Mishnah Brura, whatever it is. Huh? Unfortunately. So, I'm not going to tell you Reb Zalman Leib's joke. There was a big Baal Musar, Reb Chatzkel Levitch there. Chatzkel. He was a Talmud in the Mir. So Reb Chatzkel once said, he was told the Litzvish, he says, you stay up Shavuos night, you go to sleep Shavuos in the morning, and you sleep till Elul. So I was speaking to Chabad Schoilim, and I said, and by you guys, it's till Simchas Torah. But, versteht, but this message, I find today, everybody is yearning for. I don't mean preaching it, speeches. It's easy to give speeches. I mean, not always easy. Depends. But the real message, to live this message. And this is what the Baal Shem Tov taught. This was the Chai Elul, the Chayis in Elul. Shchoirani v'nava. Tshuva, of course, confession, of course, but in context of who you are. Every child needs to know this. Every bacher needs to know this. Every girl needs to know. Every adult needs to know this. They say that there was once a camel, a baby camel, who turned to the mother and said, Mom, I have a question. Yes, Payere. And the little camel says, why do we have such ugly feet? 3-toed ugly feet. She says, because you know who we are. You think we're Stam? We are made to trek through long deserts, Sahara deserts, thousands of miles. How do you go? You need flat feet with thick toes. We have 3 toes. Geschmack. Mama, one more question. Why these ugly eyebrows? She says, you go through the deserts, there are sandstorms. You want to get blind? So God created these huge ugly eyebrows to protect us from the sandstorms. Geschmack. Mama, one more question. Why these ugly, weird humps on our backs? You travel through Sahara Desert, where are you going to find water? You want to die from dehydration? So God made that we should be able to drink so much water and store it in our bodies. Enormous quantities of water so we can trek through hundreds and hundreds of miles without dehydration, without dying from thirst. Geschmack. After a few minutes she says, Mama, I have one more question. If I understood your shiur, Mother, we have 3-toed feet to walk thousands of miles. We have big eyebrows to protect us from sandstorms as we go through thousands of miles. We have huge humps on our backs to store the water as we trek thousands of miles. So what in the world are we doing in a cage in the zoo? Explain to me why we have been in the Bronx Zoo for the last 8.5 years in a cage. That's vidui. When you understand who you are, when you understand what you can be, when you understand what your essence is, when you understand how much God loves you, when you understand how good you are, then you can say, so why am I stuck in a cage in the Bronx Zoo for the last 8.5 years? So now I could say, Ashamnu Bagadnu Gazalnu. Chassidus didn't come to minimize, chas v'sholem, the gravity of an Isur, D'Oraisa, D'Rabbanan, minute. Chalila! Chassidus came to put it in context. Context. Vos hayid is. Vos ha-neshama is. What a person is. Who you really are. And to reveal the part of you that no abuse and even negative experiences can ultimately shatter, even if they're very painful. Not long ago I was at a bar mitzvah. In the middle of the dancing, I came in and the father of the mitzvah bacha asked if I could come over. He pulled me over to come dance with him. And we're in the middle of the dance floor. I'm standing with him and dancing. There's very beautiful music. And in the middle of the dance, I take a look at him and he starts crying. He starts crying. I thought he's crying from simcha. But it seemed like it wasn't from simcha. So I said, why are you crying? As we're dancing. He says, Rabbi Jacobson, did anything worthwhile come of me? I'm shocked. I'm dancing with a Baal Simcha at his Simcha. I say, what? He says, did anything worthwhile come from me? I say, from you? It's your son's bar mitzvah. Can I know that you have 5 beautiful kids? You're wonderful. What type of question is this? He says to me, we were classmates. This and this day in yeshiva. We were in a certain yeshiva together. A few people know what I'm talking about. And there was a certain person there who didn't have the best pedagogical skills of sensitivity. Let's put it that way. He came over to me, he's telling me at the bar mitzvah, and he told me, you're wasting your time. Nothing will ever come of you. So he says, Rabbi Jacobson, answer that question, did anything come of me today? I looked at him, I said, this happened 30 years ago. Today you're asking me the question? And listen to his response, verbatim. Rabbi Jacobson, not a day goes by that I don't think about what that person told me. And I want you tonight to answer me and tell me the truth. Was he right about me or was he wrong? And I thought to myself, this man dancing with me is lucky. You know why he's lucky? He's aware of it. How many people his age are walking around? They're not even aware that this is what they're thinking about every day. It's in the backdrop of their subconscious, but it guides almost everything they do or they don't do. How they treat their spouses, how they treat their children, how they treat themselves. Because of this message that's playing in the back of their brain. Ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, dibarnu, yavinu. Without the context. Shchoina nivenavo. The Baal Shem Tov came and said, no matter any message anybody told you, or you told yourself, or life circumstances have told you, you have to be able to go back to that core essence that is unshakable, that is wholesome, that carries the dignity of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu B'chvoidoi B'atzmai, of which you are a fragment and a reflection, and live from that place. Live from that space. Even if there's a struggle between these two souls and between negative messages of the Yetzer Hara, which first message is Atzlus V'atzlus Mi'yesod Ha'afar. How terrible and irredeemable you are. Unredeemable you are. And today, if you're familiar with the community a little intimately, you know that this is what people are yearning for. In a very deep place. In a very deep place. And you can't teach it through pontificating, through preaching. You can teach it through living. People are sick and tired of hearing what they should do. They heard that all their life. They want to know how. Tell me how. There's no disagreement today of what yeah, what not. Very little. Tell me how. Just tell me how. Give me the tools. And this was one of the great contributions that the Baal Shem Tov taught, and the Alter Rebbe developed it into the whole system of Chachma Bina Das in his own unique, inimitable way in Teres Chabad. And this is one big yesod that Tzemach Tzedek, as the Merkez, as one of the great centers of Lubavitch. And Lubavitch here in Monsey, under the leadership of Rav Leshes Shlita, and with the assistance and partnership of so many Chassidim and Shemaisa, young and old, spirited Jews, lively Jews, men and women and children, to become a pillar of light, a beacon of light, of the niggin of Yiddishkeit that's behind the Ashamnu, and behind the Bagadnu, and behind the Al-Chet. Your name is Tzemach Tzedek. Why was this name chosen? I don't know.
Why?
Huh? Why the name Tzemach Tzedek?
Rabbi
Rabbi Vichlan chose the name Tzemach Tzedek as a Chrono Levracha. So the Tzemach Tzedek, Schusa Yagad Aleinu, was one sitting. Listen. And a Yid came to him, a Yid was sitting and said, I'm going to tell you a mice about your Zayda. You know how people say, I knew your grandfather, right? Somebody once came into the Frierdiker Rebbe and said, Ich hab gekent deine Taten. I knew your father. The Rebbe looked at him and said, Ihr habt nicht gekent mein Taten, ihr habt gesehen mein Taten. You did not know my father. You saw my father. He tells us Tzemach Tzedek, I want to tell you a story about Yuzeda. Yuzeda, the Alter Rebbe, was given a gift. What was the gift? A silver box of Shmek Tabak. Snuff tobacco. The Alter Rebbe looked at it. It was beautiful silver, and he said, one limb in the body is not a baltaiva. One limb, the nose. Das wird man euch verstopfen machen a baltaiva. So he says to the Tzemach Tzedek, your grandfather broke off the cover of the box. It was silver, it was a mirror, and he used it. He said he's going to use it for his tefillin shorosh. Simple story. Tzemach Tzedek stopped him and said no. And listen to his words. I'm going to say it in Yiddish and translate. He said, wrong. He said, your grandfather broke off the cover of the box. Tzemach Tzedek said, the Zayde is nicht gewen shayach zu brechen. Nicht sich und nicht jener. My grandfather was incapable of breaking or crushing, not himself nor others. What's pshat? There was a hinge connecting the cover to the box. He removed the hinge. Once he removed the hinge, he could use it for tefillin shorosh. I want to ask you a question. What did the person already say? That he broke a silver box. That's called breaking. And the Tzemach Tzedek says he wasn't capable of breaking, not himself, not others. Who's talking about breaking himself? He's talking about a silver Shmek Tabak box. Come on. What's pshat? Amok miyim senu. So the Rebbe once told a story of Habrei. You know what the Rebbe said? Listen to this. He says, what's tefillin? What's tefillin? Tefillin is shibud halev ha'mayach. Subjugating your heart and your brain to the Rebbeinu Shalom. How do you subjugate your heart and your brain to Hashem? Not through breaking. Don't you have to break yourself to subjugate your heart and your brain? Comes the Tzemach Tzedek and teaches that even for tefillin, which is shibud halev ha'mayach, never broke. He never broke. There's no such a thing as breaking in his vocabulary. Sometimes you got to remove the hinges. You got to remove the addictions. You got to remove the enslavement. You got to remove the gluttony. But you don't break. You'll now quote me all the prakim in Tanya, Perek Chavtes, and so many other prakim of Leiv, Nishbar, V'nitke, Atem, Meshuket, Sumetuv, Menuva. How many prakim in Tanya they talk about a Leiv, Nishbar, Shviras HaLeiv? The Tzemach Tzedek didn't know Tanya. We know Tanya better. So here's our challenge. If you're learning Tanya and you're feeling broken, you're not learning Tanya. You're projecting your own insecurities onto Tanya. And that's a tragedy. Is that a tragedy that's on the leg? When you project your insecurities on Tanya? If you're getting from Tanya a sense of breaking, it's not Tanya you're learning. Because the Zayde is nicht gewen shayach zu brechen. You know why? Nicht sich und nicht jenem. People who just crush themselves crush others. Because that's their vocabulary, that's what they know. He didn't break himself. He didn't break others. Sometimes I have to challenge myself. I have to break an addiction. But breaking yourself, no! It's lifting yourself up. It's going back to your whiteness. Breaking. It's rehabilitation. It's building. The Rebbe's birthday is Chayel. He had a chassid of Shmuel Munkes. Shmuel Munkes once came to a shtetl for slichus. They used to have the old Magidim. You know what a Magid was? Preacher. Gets up in front of the Kehillah. It's a simple, small Kehillah. Simple, God-fearing Jews. And he tells them, Rabbi YY, you're a bunch of sinners. And I want you to know you're all going to go to Gehenna. And they were simple Jews, they took him seriously. They all started to cry. Now for a Maggid, the greatest success is when everybody is crying. Because if they're crying, they'll invite him back again. They'll invite him back again, we'll make more money. So he sees it, so he goes on. He starts describing what type of Gehenna they're going to have. The barbecue sauce, the level of heat. And they're weeping, Nebuch, weeping. Poisha Yisrael, sinners, despicable Jews. He goes on and on and on. If you don't do tshuva, you'll all be harassed and punished. He finishes his speech. They're weeping and he's felling. A success story. So Shabbos, Shmuel Munkes goes to visit him in his motel. Shmuel Munkes introduces himself. How can I help you? Shmuel Munkes tells him, Rabbi Yid, you know, I have a very big issue. We're from this shtetl, and we heard today what Rishayim we are. And obviously our fathers were the same Rishayim as Zaydis all the way back. He says, Emes, you have to do tshuva. He says, we have a problem, there's a halacha. Shulchan Aruch, it's brought to Erev Rosh Hashanah, there's a minhag to go, bizach mishtateach, to go and pray to Hashem by the kvarim of parents of tzaddikim, but our Beis HaKvaros is full of Rishayim. So we need once and for all to have a tzaddik buried in our midst, so we can go and pray by his grave, and maybe that will help us do tshuva. So he says, interesting idea. How can I help you? Shmuel Munker says, I have searched for a tzaddik, and I have not found a tzaddik like you. And therefore, and he slowly takes out a knife, a challah from his satuk. He says, and therefore, l'shem yichud kudsha brichu shchint arei muchen mezunah, to mekayim the mitzvah of Erev Rosh Hashanah, going to Kivrei Tzaddik, by putting somebody here in the grave who's a tzaddik, and life will forever be rosy, spiritually rosy in this town. The Yid sees that this guy means business. He's like, Ich bin nicht das tzaddik. I'm not such a tzaddik. Ah, you're humble too. Wow. This is what we're looking for. Comes closer, starts making the bracha, Baruch Atah. No, I'm really not a tzaddik. He says, listen, it's humility. He says, I'm not being humble, I'm telling you the truth. He says, what's the truth? He says, I've done sins in my life. He says, Legabe us, you're the great tzaddik. Everything is relative in this world. Theory of relativity. I just heard what Rishayim this community is. Legabe them, you are a tzaddik gomer. He says, no, I have done a lot of sins. He says, please, what have you done? What's chveis one sin 65 years ago? Legabe them, you're a tzaddik. He says, no, I have committed sins recently. He says, what's recently? What, 35 years ago? He says, no, a few days ago. He says, lo mashal. And to save his life, he starts telling Reb Shmuel Munkus about this which he did, and that which he did, and that which he did, and this he did, and this he did, and this he did. You see, I'm not a tzaddik. Don't shecht me. Shmuel Munkus looks at him and says, Pera Adam. Pera Adam. You know who you are. How do you have the chutzpah to get up and rebuke God's children, God-fearing Jews, putting yourself on the stool of superiority and denigrating them this way? How do you do this? Shmuel Munkus went out, perhaps with a good laugh, and this Jew went out with a good lesson. In a community, it's very easy to be judgmental. You have your taruvas of different Yidden. You have older, you have younger, you have old Monseyites, and you have young Monseyites. You have people who are in love with this place. You have people who are always complaining. Jewish communities are a tzibur. You have chronic complainers in communities. Again, present company excluded. I don't talk about this place. Nobody here complains. But Jewish communities, everyone has what to say. That's the fact. Everybody has a daya, a view, an opinion. Jews are a very complicated people. Very complicated people. And when you have so many types of people together, the challenge of Rabbi Lesha said of kahal, kehila, of having principles and yet not being judgmental. This can only come from a real permeated Yiras Shamayim and Chassidus, where being truly God-fearing doesn't right away translate into judgmentalism. That's not an easy combination. But if you look at all the great tzaddikim, the holier they were, the less judgmental. You would think the holier they were, the more judgmental. It's the other way around. The holier you are, the more you're connected to the God space in you, the more you see the God space in other people, the more you could appreciate the beauty, the depth in other people, the less judgmental you are, even if you disagree with certain things. I once heard that before his Nesias, the Rebbe once said, when Yaakov Avinu went to sleep, what does Rashi say from the Gemara in Chulin? All the rocks were fighting. You know the Monsey, yeah? All the rocks were fighting. So there's a joke. There's a joke, right? You know the joke. The rocks were fighting, Yaakov Avinu wakes up, what does he say? Ein Zakim Beis Elokim. This is a house of God, this is a shul. How did he know? Yaakov goes in, he says, even the rocks are fighting, only in a shul. Ein Zakim Beis Elokim. V'zeh Shar Shamayim. If rocks are fighting, it must be a shul. Not Tzemach Tzedek, I'm talking in concept. This is unique. I have an old theory. A Yid sent to me today, a few days ago, from a certain shul in another state. Board meetings, the Eibishter's always sitting. So I wrote to him, you have to understand, all insecurities of all Jewish men come out in shul. Because in their house, they're embarrassed because their wife is going to tell them what to do or where to go. In business, if they speak this way, they'll be thrown out of the business. So where do all of their insecurities come out? Usually in synagogue. In synagogue, so I suggested that every board meeting you have to have a therapist who sits there, and after everybody's comment, he has to tell them, would you appreciate if I can help you analyze what you just said and see where it's coming from in your heart and what we can work on together over the next few years. I said it would be very, very helpful. Very, very helpful at every meeting. Again, present company excluded. So Yaakov Avinu says, if the rocks are fighting Ein Zakim Beis Elokim, this is an alta verte. But now I want to tell you, the Rebbe, listen to this. Amuk Amuk, Mamash Moededik. He says, all the stones were fighting. What were they fighting about? That Tzedek should put his head on me, right? Everybody wants the head of the Tzedek. I don't want the feet. What am I, a guy who gets Revi? I want Mafter. Right? You know, a guy who once came to shul and he got Revi, he goes over to the Gabbai and he says, in my shul they give dogs Revi. The Gabbai says, here too. So you know, these two guys were in love forever, right? The Gabbai and him were in love forever. So, they're fighting, everybody wanted the head of the tzaddik. Ma'as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did Hashem do? It says he took all the rocks, yeah, and he made them into one rock. So the Rebbe asked the Pashta Shaila. Even if you take all the rocks and you make them into one rock, the head is still in one place. The head can't lay on every part of the rock. All you accomplished was that it's not 12 rocks, it's one rock. But why did the fight cease? Why did they stop fighting? They should have now fought which part of the rock gets the head. So Kvoid Kedushas Admur, the Rebbe said this. I'll say it in Yiddish and then I'll translate. He says, as mit der Hert, as mis ein Zach, eit mir nicht, that du kriegst the cup. When we come to learn that we're really one, I don't care if you get the head. Because if you get the head, I also got the head. For me to win, I need you to win. And if you lose, I also lost. As long as the rocks see themselves as different, as distinct, as separate, they're not part of one bigger picture, then I want the head, you want that, I want the, no, I want the head. Avodas Hashem al Pichsidis especially comes to be able to unite the Avonim and say there's different rocks and they have different personalities, but they're ultimately one. They're serving one God, and they're Chassidim of one Rebbe, and they have one Torah, and there's ultimately one large vision of Einoid Mulvade, of Achdus Hashem, of a world of redemption, a world of Gul. It's ultimately oneness, even though everyone does it in their way and through their personality. This one is loud, and this one is soft, and this one is outgoing, this one is ingoing, this one is extrovert, this one outrovert, this one loves socializing, this one is a cocoon, this one is a bookworm, this one is a schmoozer. Fine! That's how it has to be. It's a jigsaw puzzle. No two pieces are the same. But the ability to be able to see in so many different rocks, one larger ever. And then it becomes Av and Ben. Aleph, Beis, Nun. Av and Ben. A father and a child. They're different, but they're one. And then you have the head. I celebrate it. Because you having the head doesn't mean I don't have the head. And me having what I have doesn't mean you don't have it. The more successful you are, the more successful I am. The more successful I am, the more successful you are. That's a consciousness that is not only healthy and wholesome, that's a divine consciousness. Reb Nachman of Breslov writes, Ein davar k'may kina ba'olam. There's no such a thing as jealousy. All jealousy is ignorance. Because the light that you have to give in the world from Hashem, nobody can give. I can't give your light. You can't give my light. I can't give your light. There's no such a thing. All jealousy is ignorance. I can't be you, you can't be me. Impossible. The Kotzker Rebbe once said, "Oy ich bin nicht, weil du bist du, und du bist du, weil ich bin nicht dich, und du bist nicht du. Oy ich bin nicht, weil ich bin nicht, und du bist du, weil du bist du, bin ich, und du bist du." I'm sure you got that. If I am I because you are you because I am not I, you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. And now we can begin to shmooze and argue. Ain't kinabon, there's no such a thing. In Greek mythology, it's all about competitiveness. If you're the best, I'm second. I envy you. In Yiddishkeit, it's a very different experience. The more your light shines, the more my light can shine. I need your light to shine. If your light is dull, my light can't shine fully. I need your light to shine, and your light will never take away from my light. Because it's your light and mine. And when it's one heaven, the head that you're supposed to have, it's my success. These two big yesodis of Chassidus. Number one, Shchoira Nivenava Vasa Mensch is what a Jew is. Number two, the sense of oneness, of purposefulness, the lack of judgmentalism, even if there's disagreements, and a sense of achdus. Two great pillars that the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe sacrificed their lives to inculcate, not only in Anshe Shleimenu, but also, as we said, not for a party, but for every single Jew. May this shul and this kehillah, celebrating a minyan of years, Asiri Yir Kodesh, and a minyan tzibur, includes every type of Jew. So I'm sure during these past 10 years, even though I don't have intimate knowledge, I'm sure the shul has been through a lot over the last 10 years. It's been through a lot. I see you're nodding your head, so I may be onto something. Reb David, the shul has been through a lot over the last 10 years. You have been through a lot, and the shul has been through a lot over the last 10 years. From this extreme to that extreme. So now, you're already getting ready, 10 years old, time to get ready for the Bar Mitzvah. The Bar Mitzvah, Chatan Shegiya L'Chinuch, not little children, we all have to grow up. I become a Chatan Shegiya L'Chinuch, take responsibility, realize the responsibility, realize the schus, realize the opportunity, because Chassidim are not self-contained. A Chassid is a shliach. There's no such a thing as self-contained shul in Chabad. If it's self-contained, it's not Chabad. If it's Chabad, it's your futzu, my noisecho, chutza. That's Chabad. The Tolner Rebbe, the Tolner Rebbe of Weinberg, was talking Gimel Tammuz in Bnei Brak. Gets up, he says, what's the difference between Breslov and Chabad? What's the difference? Tolner Rebbe. You know what he said? He said, Reb Nachman wanted all the Breslov to have long payas, right? Now is the season before the Uman, Elul, Anilu Uman, Ve'ishti, whatever. They have long payas. Why long payas? Why long 30,000 Jews? Nish kegelachta, it's nish pashut. Why long payas? And Nachman said, listen, you'll probably end up, in purgatory in Gehenna. How am I going to get you out? You have payas. I'll schlep you out. The Tolner Rebbe says a Breslov comes up to heaven. Malach Michal says, do tell me. Breslov is a munah, bitachim, simcha. You had a munah. Could be better. Bitachim could be better. Simcha, not quite. His boydidus once in a while. Uman that year. Tikkun HaKloli that year. You were mamash a follower of Reb Nachman Kedeboy. Nah. Go to hell. So he goes to Gehenna. Gets hot. He starts screaming, Rebbe! Reb Nachman, Nachman hears a Yid screaming, runs in. Has payas? Chaps him by his payas, Atazun, that's why he's sitting here. Chaps him by his payas, schleps him out. Tolner Rebbe says, a Lubavitch comes to heaven. After 180 years or even more. They say, no, let's start. You want Oived Hashem al Piderech Chassidus? Sure. Come. You learned the way Yisasta Chassid learns. Halavai. 2 Mesechtes in Shas, you finished the year. Halavai. 3 Prakim Ramam, 1 Perek Ramam, you learned well. Halavai. You are Dugma Chaya, a living example of Simcha, Munah, Avos Yisrael, Avos Hashem, Avos HaTorah. Halavai. Go to hell. He goes to Gehenim, it gets hot. So what does the Lubavitch do? He starts screaming, Rebbe, Hanateve. The Rebbe hears a Yishait. Walks in. Rebbe, help me. Goes over to him, takes out $1, gives it to him. Hatzlacha Rabbi in your shlichus right here. And the Talmud Rebbe conveyed such a beautiful idea that in the Rebbe's world there was no such a thing. I'm in Gehenim, I'm in hell, I'm in purgatory, I'm lost. You're not anywhere. You're a shliach. You were sent. You're on a shlichus. You're not a victim. You're not hopeless. Don't despair. You're on a shlichus. You're on a mission. So lift yourself up, flex your muscles, realize where you are, and start doing the work. Instead of groaning and moaning and complaining, tell you to start doing the work. But everyone's made a siyum on Makkas, and he said they saw the foxes coming out. You know the mice coming out of Kodesh HaKadoshim. They all started to cry. Who? Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lezer, Gdoili Adon. Rabbi Akiva is laughing. So they say, why you're laughing? He says, why you're crying? So the Rebbe touched us a hair of word. A word, he said it as a fast. He said they saw a fox coming out of Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why a fox? Why not a weasel? Why not a rat? Why not a mouse? Why just a fox? You'll say that's what happened. Why does Torah tell us that part? Because the Gemara says in Brachas that a shua is Pikeach Shebachayis. It's the wisest, the slyest, clever animal, a shua. As you know, a fox is very strategically inclined. It's a very interesting animal. It's Chachma, Pikeach Shebachayis. You know what they saw? They saw that the Chachma of the Jewish people is leaving Kodesh HaKadoshim. They saw that the brilliance, the depth, the wisdom, the creativity, the Chachma Shebenefesh is leaving Kodesh HaKadoshim. Which in simple English means our greatest, our best, our finest, our brightest are leaving Kodesh HaKadoshim. They started to cry. And I'm going to quote the Rebbe. So Rabbi Akiva said to them, Was meint ihr? Bringt sie zurück allein in Kodesh HaKadoshim. Was meint ihr? Stop crying. Go bring them back into Kodesh HaKadoshim. And you're only going to be able to bring back into Kodesh HaKadoshim if you laugh and you smile and you're happy. They're crying. Look what's happening. He said, stop crying. Go bring them back in. And you're only going to bring them back in if they see that you're happy. Because if they see that you're miserable, why should they go back in? They're looking for happiness. In one Torah here you have everything our generation has to know. With simcha, with a shlichus, to be able to be America's Mailin Lahalois Bakodesh Mechayel El Choyel, that from 10 years Asiri Kodesh to go to Yud Aleph, from 10 which is Esses Sfiris to go to Yud Aleph which is Sfiris HaKeser, which is Lamailin Medidav HaGbola, which is Atik and Arich, to go from 10 which represents finiteness and containment, Hagbola, that finally even Monsey should be able to experience a little bleakvul, to be able to go out of limitations, to go out of containment, to Faratzta, Yama, I don't know which direction I am, but Yama, Vakedma, Tzafayna, Venegba, Mitech Simcha, Mitech Shalom, and together go the Kabel, Pnei Mashiach, Tzedkeinu, B'mheira, B'yameinu, Mamash, L'chaim, and a good gebench, Yara Shem, L'tayim, L'sayim.